Montserrat is here. Who's missing? Are we missing Oscar? Yeah. You're not Oscar, are you? No. Who's Oscar? Oscar is the one who sits over there. Yeah? Okay. Diane is here and Alejandro is here, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so get ready. In about 2 minutes, you start your debate. Diana is going to be against, and you're going to be for.
Okay.
So what's the news on the trade balance? If you don't read the newspapers, you won't be able to.
Yes, I know. On the United States?
No, the Mexican trade balance.
We sign up, well, Peña Nieto sign up right now with presidents, like, I think.
This is it, yeah?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so tell Diana because she doesn't know what we're talking about here.
Well, they, like,
I'm not sure if she does, but do you know what the Alianza del Pacífico is?
The Trans-Pacific Alliance?
No, the Alianza del Pacífico.
But Peña Nieto just signed a couple of days ago with it's Colombia, Chile, Mexico, and there's a fourth one that I cannot remember.
Peru.
Peru.
Yeah. So what did we sign?
To lower the barriers to zero.
Not the barrier exactly, but yes, the whole idea is that we should go that way. But very specifically right now is what? What's going to go to zero? Yeah, it's barriers, but what kind of barriers?
The trade barriers.
Which ones?
Agriculture?
What is a trade barrier?
Tariffs,
Taxes.
taxes and tariffs.
Tariffs,
Quotas?
quotas, and many non-quantitative, okay? So all the non-quantitative that we have will be the ones that we'll have to look at later on. But the ones that we're going to be reducing immediately is type. They will go to zero as quickly as possible. In fact, they are talking in the next 3 months going down to zero in most of the types, and then the rest. So, okay. So Alejandro and Diana are going to be debating. Diana is going to be against, and you're going to be for, okay? And Montserrat and Oscar, but once he shows up, are going to be talking about trade balance. The results on the Mexican trade balance last year. We just got, the latest news was that we had a surplus on the merchandise trade balance of $163 million. Now that's good news because it's the first time in about 10 years that it happens. But then one is going to be in favor of that, the other one's going to be against it. So you're going to be for or against? For. Okay. Okay, so let's start the debate then. Diana and Alejandro. They just signed the Alianza del Pacífico, okay? And so you will have to stand up here so that the rest of your classmates can see you. Welcome. Who wants to start the debate? So you're going to be speaking for it,
Okay.
and she's going to be speaking against it. Why are you in favor of the Alianza?
Well, I think I'm in favor because since we have seen the last classes, free trade will always help countries towards a more competitive society. Therefore, I am strongly in agreement with this alianza.
Okay, so why are we against?
I am against it because, as we read for this class, not opening the countries in a in a global way, but opening them in regional treaties because it does not create trade, it diverts it. So I think that we should ideally create a global, made the same, but all around the world, not just some countries. That's where I'm against it.
But
Okay.
I think you cannot make it worldwide just suddenly. So this is a good way to start to open the economies of these countries.
Okay, so we're going to stop the debate right here because we're going to pick it back next class, so you will have time to prepare, okay? Now, each one of you has to choose from the group which is facing you right there, choose one advisor that will be working with you on that debate. So whom are you choosing? Who's going to be your partner?
Mariana.
Mariana. Okay, you have been recruited, okay? This is not a problem. So the two of you will have to prepare the case. You have to take a look at what it means, the Alianza del Pacífico, what it implies in terms of the countries that we are getting involved, the size of the market, the problems of the market, the things of the market, okay? And in addition to that, you will have to make the case not only in terms of what you are doing right now, which is a global theoretical exercise, but if I am an enterprise in Mexico, if I am an enterprise, if I'm a firm in Peru, Chile, whatever country, why am I going to be in favor or against? What are the things that I would like to see for it? Remember, you're making the case against it. So there is the things that you are talking right now in general terms, and in addition, there has to be things that you as an enterprise will be considering. Okay? So you get ready for that. Who are you choosing, Alejandro?
Mariana also.
Okay, so it's going to be the show of the Marianas, okay? Okay, so the two of you will have to prepare the case for it. And it has to go in the global concept that he is presenting right now, but in addition, you will have to be presenting from the structure of a firm, a company, working in either one of these 4 countries, why you will be in agreement, okay? Remember, this is a debate seminar. This is not
From the point of view of companies.
You have to look at it from the point of view of the country, and then you have to look at it from the point of view of the company. You're going to be working in a company. So you have to go to your board and tell your board why you are in agreement of this kind of alliance, okay? Which is a trade agreement, okay? So Oscar, you're Oscar, yeah? You're Oscar, okay. Oscar, since you are right now, you are part of the debate, so sit down, and actually don't sit down, you go right there in front. And Montserrat. Okay, so Montserrat, you're going to make the case for, and you're going to be against. So one of the causes of getting it... No. Since you were late, you don't know what this is all about.
Okay.
This is one of the problems of being late in life, okay? That you're caught unaware. So what we are discussing is this is going to be a debate. I just want some initial thoughts. You are going to be speaking against the fact that in Mexico we just had a $163 million surplus on our trade balance. And why is that bad or good for the country? You are going to be speaking why you think we should not be getting those results, okay? We should be getting negative results, deficits. Why is that good? So you start, Montserrat, since you have an advantage over him.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why having a surplus was bad?
Yeah. You have to defend that. Isn't that nice?
Okay.
Okay. There are reasons why some people would think that it's not good for the country to have a surplus.
Okay.
Okay? But there are things why she's going to be saying, why is it good? Remember what we're talking about. We're not talking in general terms. We're talking, this is Mexico. Last year we had a result. And the result on our trade balance, the merchandise trade balance, not the overall balance of payments. We got a positive result, which is the first one in many, many years. $163 million surplus. Okay. So you may say it's good. Well, if you cannot find anything wrong with that, try to find wrong things.
Okay.
Well, of course, it's good to have it right now because, for the rest of the world, it appears like our economy has a stability, and then the government is doing right now. They are trying to put Mexico as a country that we can have more foreign investment. So, right now, they are doing all that stuff on the World Economic Forum. They are trying to put Mexico as a good economy, and this shows clearly that we have some good results, and our economy, it's right now, it's stability. We have stability, and that we can increase our trades, so we can still improve the trade.
Well, I think it's more important to close on the gap between the middle class, the upper middle class, and the lower middle class, because the surplus doesn't mean a everyone has access to the products we have and the products we're exporting. Instead of exporting, we should care more about those kind of people who don't have access to those kind of products and services.
Okay, good. These are the beginnings of the debate, okay? You are pretty much stating your positions. So what you need to do now is get a counselor, an advisor that will work with you. Who's going to be that one?
Okay, Yamel.
Okay, so Yamel is going to be working with you on preparing the case for next class, okay? Okay? And who are you choosing as your advisor? You cannot pick the Marianos because they have already been picked up, you know, so. We already have 2 more people working, Montserrat and Bayana. And,
I don't know their names.
just point at them and ask for their name.
What are the Marianas? So not to pick. Okay, then I choose. What's your name? No?
Diane is already in the other debate. He's already in the other.
Okay.
So go for the back of the class.
You?
Mauricio.
Mauricio?
So Mauricio is going to be working with you, okay? And next Wednesday, we're going to start the class with these 2 debates. You have exactly 10 minutes each for the debate, meaning 5 minute debate on that, and then we'll have a general discussion, okay?
Just Wednesday or Friday?
Friday. Yeah.
This Friday?
Yeah. This is what's called a bomberazo,
Okay.
okay? You know that expression?
Yeah.
Whenever you're going to be working, people will go to you and will say, es un bomberazo. That means you don't have much time. We have a fire happening in the house. You better go and work fast and turn it off. Okay? That's the way you're going to be working in many, many occasions. What's going to happen wherever you go to work, things happen all of a sudden. And when they happen, you only have 24 hours, 12 hours, 2 hours to resolve the problem. Okay? And you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for that kind of activity and action. This is real life. This is not nice environment like this one where you have warnings and everything else. Okay? So let's go. Next class we start with our debate. Okay, we talk about Pemex, and this is an aside, okay? We're talking about the importance of Pemex in the Mexican economy. But one of the things I told you last time is Pemex doesn't really belong to the Mexican people. Pemex belongs to the government in turn. And you want to see why? This is just by chance I happened to see this. These are the results of the financial reports of Pemex in the past, 5 years. So what you can see right now is Pemex is a very profitable company. If you look at Pemex as a company, if it were a private company, you will have a private company which is making profits every single year. Remember, these are billions of pesos, so it's a lot of money. This is what they are making every single year as a result of the operation. Now, the problem for Pemex is, because it's a state enterprise, and because it belongs to the government, what the government does, it takes away all the profits and basically establishes a very special fiscal system. And through that fiscal system, what it does, it really takes all the money and more that company is producing. Okay? So what you see right now is the problem of a company which in fact is not behaving as a private company, but rather as a public sector company. It's not that they are not efficient in terms of the operation. They generate a lot of profits. But the difficulty for this company is when the government comes and says, but you are not a private company, you're a public company. And as such, there is something that I'm interested in. And it has nothing to do with economics, has nothing to do with good financial management of the company. It has to do with the needs of the government. As a result of that, the government has created a system, what's called taxes and rights. And by taxing this company in this combination, because this amount of money is required to fulfill the public sector deficit in the budget, in the national budget, then what it does, it really is taking away from this company the possibility of being a good company in terms of the long run profits and possibilities. So what it does, takes away this amount. Look at the amount that we're talking about. We're talking about 60% of total sales of the company as taxes. Okay? 50% 58%, 50%, 51%, 56%. So what it implies is I'm not managing the company as you should be managing a normal, regular company. Looking at the maximization of profits, the most efficient way of doing business. What I'm doing with this company is I'm establishing two parameters which are terrible. The first one is you have to use the company to create jobs. So you have a large number of people working, which when you look at the international standards of how many people you need to manage a company the size of Pemex, is probably about 40 or 50% more than what they need. But it's not a question of efficiency, it's a question of I want you to generate employment for people. Okay? So when I have those concerns, I'm not going to be using the company as you will be managing your own company. That's one problem. In spite of that, the company makes a lot of money. Yeah, because this is a great business. And as they make that amount of money, the government takes away the money from them. Because this money goes as revenue for the fiscal side, okay? Pemex represents around 9% of GDP in revenues for the federal government. 9% of GDP. That's a lot of money. And so, when we talk about the Mexican economy not being heavily taxed, it is true. In terms of taxes, we only get about 11 or 12% of GDP. You know, income tax, value tax, all these taxes. But because we are using Pemex as our milking cow, we take away from Pemex 9% of GDP. And the result for Pemex is terrible, okay? Because even though this company will have had a great, result, once I take away this, I'm having a negative result, okay? So I make a profit of 593, but the government takes away 6077 in taxes and rights. As a result of that, I lose money. Do I lose money because I'm a bad company? No, I lose money because of the way the system is created. This is one of the reasons why it's so bad to have private companies transform into public companies, because then the whole set of goals, what will be the definition of why I operate in one way or another, has nothing to do with economics or finance or whatever you are used to.
So what if it's like so important the government doesn't want the foreign investment?
The government wants now to accept foreign investment because as they go into this situation, they require investments to maintain the company being a top-notch, technologically oriented, top of the technological chain. Because that's the only way that you're going to be competitive when you compete with Exxon and other companies, okay? The problem is I cannot do that because, in the end, my problem is as long as I have this, I'm going to be losing money, and whatever I get as investment, I have to go for a loan. And so this company, in addition to everything else, is getting larger and larger amounts of debt. Now, the government then says, well, we cannot continue to do that. And what we need to do is we need now to bring foreign people to invest so that they can supply the resources required to maintain this company growing and using the latest technology in terms of how do I discover oil and then extract oil from deep underground, both at sea and in Mexico. Okay? But it's not a problem that the company is not profitable. The problem is, with these amounts, the company simply doesn't have the capacity to make the investments.
And how do they establish the percentage they take out from the profits?
It depends how much money do I need to put my budget in zero. Basically, I'm saying it's basically that. What the government says is, look, these are the expenses I'm going to have, these are the revenues I have from
They
regular,
just take what they need.
and then what I do is I take the money from Pemex. Okay? That's why they put in the budget a certain price for the barrel of oil. And on the basis of that price, what I'm defining is the amount of revenues I'm going to be taking away from Pemex as taxes and rights. And the combination of those will have to be sufficient for me to reach my public sector deficit. And that right now is zero, okay? So, because I want to have it in equilibrium, sure. So that means you're going to have to go to this company and say, sorry, I need more money. And so they simply cannot say no, because the owner is the government. And once they do that, they have all these problems. As they have these problems, they will need more and more to go into a lending process. So one of the key things that we don't look in Mexico is, as we do these things, we are disguising the fact that in reality, our public sector budget has two weaknesses. The first one is, it must be in deficit because if Pemex has to go for a loan, then it means that loan, whatever that amount is, and it's roughly 2% of GDP, is my real deficit when I put together everything. But the second thing, which is terrible, is as I keep doing this, I'm disguising the fact that I'm exploiting, I'm basically destroying a company that could be very profitable for Mexico because I'm using all this money that the company then cannot use to do what any normal company will do. Okay? As a result of that, I'm weakening Pemex. I'm creating a condition for Pemex where Pemex will ultimately not be able to function properly. And therefore, what I need to do is I need a fiscal reform so that I can say all this amount of money that is given to me from Pemex, I should go to a normal situation. What is a normal situation? Any company in Mexico has to pay, just to put a number, 30% of taxes, income tax. Well, that's what we should be taxing this company. And that implies if they made 593, I'm going to charge them 180, not 680. Okay, it's 500 billion pesos that I'm taking away from the company, and they cannot say no. Yes, ma'am.
But do you think that somebody will want to invest in a company that they take all the money, all the profits away?
It depends how you do that, yes. Because what I can do is I can come to you and say, fine, I have no problem. What you will be doing is I'm going to be making these investments, but under an agreement where I will be making these profits and really get the money from there. So that will affect your operational return. Yeah, it's just how to do the contract, okay? And yeah, if I have all the equipment and it's idle, I can much better use it by going with you and making an agreement.
And can the fiscal sector get the money like from another way?
Only through taxes. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to make a reform, a tax reform, that will allow me to free Pemex from this obligation. As I do that, then Pemex can behave as a normal, efficient company. And it is. I mean, there are inefficiencies, okay, but they can do much better than this, yes. But at the same time, let them do it. Like, they can't. Okay. So in this discussion in Mexico between which is better, the energy reform or the fiscal reform, in my opinion is you have to go first for the fiscal reform because that's the only way that you can do the energy reform. So otherwise it's very complicated to do anything on Pemex if Pemex has to continue to give you that amount of money. Okay. But what we're going to be doing is exactly the opposite. We're going to go first for the energy and then, why? Because politically it's very difficult to do a tax reform. Just look at the discussion happening right now. Yes?
I heard in the news that Pemex is going to work with Petrobras.
Well, if they do that, then they make an alliance, okay? As they make an alliance, they distribute how they would be distributing the profits. And so you go into that combination. And those are the kind of contracts you have to sign. In the end, that's the whole point. But what will be healthier for the country will be for everybody to come and say, look, it doesn't make sense to have this company like that. Let's free Pemex from this obligation and let Pemex behave as a normal company, okay? By normal, I mean a market-oriented company whose goal is not to pay this amount, but whose goal is to make as many profits as possible over the long run and then exploit the resource. That was the reason why in the last class I was telling you it would make more sense to keep exporting oil than to transform the oil. But if I were a normal company, what I would do is, what is my richest asset, the strongest I have? It's the oil on the ground. The oil in the ground is really the biggest asset of Pemex. And so what I'm going to do is how can I exploit that the best way? And then I will behave like Exxon or Shell or any other corporation. Yes?
But wouldn't that, I remember that you told us that Mexico's governmental debt is around 30% of GDP. So now if we take that money away, the budget's going to go down and our debt is going to go up and maybe the country well, it will be more realistic because when we kill the gold and eggs hen, then
It's
we're
a goose,
gonna
it's a
realize,
goose in English, okay?
then we're gonna realize that our country is not really as good.
And so you go back to the question I asked at the beginning, what are the fundamentals of the economy that you brag so much about? Because all of a sudden we're finding out that, what happens when Pemex disappears? We have a 9% GDP as percentage deficit in the fiscal accounts.
And unemployment.
Well, but, the amount of people that Pemex employs is not very nothing. They are very well paid, which is a different thing. Okay, I just want to put this as an aside, okay, because we talk about that. The question for you in all these things is, if I look at companies, they will behave by different specifications. If my goal is to provide this amount to the government, then my behavior as a company is quite different than if my goal is to provide the largest amount of market capital in the world, okay? What is the goal of many companies? Market capitalization. What is the meaning of that? When I go to a market, my shares value have to go up. As they go up, I'm becoming a very important company. As I become an important company, that implies I am a well-managed company. Who knows? Maybe yes, maybe no. But I'm using the market as my definition. Here I'm not using the market, okay? I'm using the deficit. That's why this belongs to the government in turn, not to the Mexicans, okay? Because in the long run, this may not be the best policy for the Mexicans, but in the short run, for each government, it is the best policy, because what they do is they take advantage of this, and then they don't have to do a fiscal reform. And if they don't have to do a fiscal reform, they don't have to face the ire of the people who vote. Okay? So I will do that too. Okay, what have we learned so far? The complexity that is taking place in the world makes necessary for us to understand that what we're going to be looking at about all these concepts of trade regimes, etc., is becoming more and more complex. And it's becoming more and more complex, as we will see next class, not only in terms of what we do in the traditional quantitative tariffs, quotas, etc., but now we're getting more and more other things that are affecting trade. Property rights, sanitation rules, environmental rules. And as we're putting all these things together, the complexity of trade has increased. Because now, if I'm a company, not only do I have to check for tariffs, for quotas, but in addition for sanitary rules, environmental rules, and so on and so forth. So the system is making itself much more complex than it was. That means I need more complex rules, but I need reliable rules. I don't want people to keep changing on me the rules. So as more and more I am producing in a chain, what we call this chain, then my rules need to be comprehensive, and therefore my complexity is becoming higher. The exchange rates are important in the end, as a company. So I need to be sure also that the balance in that country will guarantee me a certain exchange rate relationship. Or else I will have to go and protect myself by buying an insurance, okay? And I will go then and I'll say, well, look at me, since I want to make profits in dollars, but I'm going to be making investments in pesos and profits in pesos, then I need to be sure what will be my return on that. That means, as a company, not only do I have to look at all these rules, but in addition I have to look at the financial markets. And I have to protect myself. So and I go and I buy an insurance. I want to buy dollars in the future market. Okay? Options. I do things that will be important. The work you're already working on is fun. I mean, really fun. And then there is more to the story, okay? And I just got this from a speech that Andrew Mitchell, the United Kingdom Secretary of State, said in one place. I don't know if you know about this place, but it's interesting, Chatham House. It's one of the best think tanks in England. Well, he said in this specific speech in February 15 was, it took Britain more than 150 years to reduce poverty by 50%. China cut the proportion of people living below the poverty line from 84% to 16% in just 25 years. And South Korea has gone from aid recipient to OECD donor in 1 generation. So he says there is no monopoly in success, blah, blah, blah. But the point he's making is, you can do things fast. So when he talks about these two countries, we find out something which is interesting. Both China and South Korea use what's called an export-oriented foreign direct investment model to reach those levels of development and growth. I'm sorry, I lost in my teeth, okay? And growth. And so what you have here is a clear message. Both China and South Korea have practically turned around the life of the population in about 20 to 25 years, 1 generation. How do they do that? They did it by looking at an export-oriented foreign direct investment. Okay? Both of them. So we have to think about that because trade then seems to be important for growth. And so we know therefore that if I'm really going to be doing something like that and I'm part of an international-oriented firm, I need a good institutional agreement. And again, what I already showed you, what I need to make sure is that it's not only the fact of what I used to be in the past, tariffs and quotas, but now I need to be sure that I have coordination of production facilities, we have a two-way flow of goods, people, ideas, and investments. So everything now gets into trade. Okay? I need to make sure that if I am developing technology and I'm going to be making investments in another country and using my new technology, that people will not steal my invention. Because if they do that, I'm losing my edge. I don't want to do that because I made a lot of money in terms of first investing and then using that new technology. And that's what will give me the profit. You know, you buy an iPhone, you buy an iPad, and you pay a lot of money. Is it really the amount of money of an iPhone what the iPhone is costing you? Probably not. I mean, for the pieces that are in there, no. But it's the fact that it became the world of the smartphones, and you're using it in many different ways. So the one who brought the technology first and allow you to use smartphones for what we have been using smartphones today is the fact of that allow iPhones to charge you a lot of money. And you pay for them. How many of you have an iPhone? Okay. But how many of us have a smartphone? All of us. So what happened all of a sudden is this new technology changed the way that we do things, and we were willing to pay a price for that technology. The guy who developed the technology wants to make sure that if he goes and he builds, as we saw last class, the telephone in different countries, no one is going to steal from them that, okay? Same thing in terms of training workers and managers, fiscal plans, assurance on business-related capital flows. Okay, I make an investment in Venezuela, and then all of a sudden the government decides I cannot take my money out. Well, then this is very complicated, okay? Because if I make an investment there, the fact is I don't want to keep my money in Venezuela. I'm making an investment from outside to have a market in Venezuela, to get a profit and bring the profits back into dollars to my main company in whatever country. Okay. If all of a sudden they change the rules and I cannot take the money away, then for my company as a whole, this is a problem. And so whenever I see institutional arrangements, you can see how they keep increasing in what should be the rules that I need to have. It's not only that you have quotas or no quotas, it's not only that you let me in with tariffs or no tariffs, it's also that if I make an investment, I want to make sure that I take the money back. And therefore, how do you allow money in, money out is important. All of these things, assurance of business-related capital flows, connecting factories often involves time-sensitive shipping. So I want to make sure that there is going to be no strikes on the ports. I want to make sure that the labor rules, the way that they do these things, so more and more and more, what you see is the complexity of trade. So when you're going to go into an agreement, you not only talk about tariffs, you not only talk about quotas, you talk about all these things. Okay? Tariffs and other border measures also matter. Look at the way it's said here. Also matter. Whereas before it was, this is the only thing that we negotiate in our agreements. Now is, I negotiate that and I negotiate a lot of other things as part of this agreement. So let's answer these questions. Is NAFTA good or bad for Mexico?
Good.
Why?
Well, because there's many more for direct investment than there was before the NAFTA.
So in your mind, one of the big benefits of NAFTA is the fact that all of a sudden it happened and we have foreign direct investment. Yeah? Why? What are the benefits of foreign direct investment? They are coming to exploit us.
But it creates jobs. And
Yeah, but that's because what they are doing is they're using our people and they are really exploiting our people.
But it's better than people that if the people were
But
like
if the America was to making $3 an hour, why the Mexicans are making only 50 cents? They're exploiting the Mexican. Are we going to allow our people to be exploited? Is that what you want?
no,
Organization?
because also the wages have increased in the last year.
Yeah, but it's 60 cents. And look at the difference. Whereas if they did it in the United States, they had to pay $2 or $3. Here they only pay 60 cents. Are you going to be happy for that? Aren't they exploiting us? Okay, you have to be prepared for those things because this is really the criticism, okay? And what you're saying is, no, there are certain things that bring, yeah, it brings jobs. And it brings, in your opinion, well-paid jobs, yeah?
At least better
Better than what?
than they used to be.
Okay, so if they are well-paid jobs relate to other jobs in the economy. Yeah? So I'm making the relationship of this not in terms of the other economy, but my own economy. Remember what we said. One of the things that are going to happen is, as we give jobs, we get better paid, and then the rule of over time, we will end up paying $3. So yes, it's good because it creates jobs, and because it creates jobs in areas where there is an international market, the wages will be higher than other wages in the economy. As a result of that, you are getting a better situation in terms of the wage structure of that economy. If you let it happen, slowly will be pulling up all the wages in the economy. But if they do that, then your economy becomes less competitive. Okay? Think about that. Keep it in your mind. We're going to come back to that. What is the meaning of that? If my wages are going up, what do I need to make sure that I will remain competitive? Or do I want to keep my people all the time with those wages? What else does it bring for indirect investment?
More opportunities to new people and diversity of products.
Now that market brings diversity of products for indirect investment. What comes with it?
More trade.
Yeah, but
Therefore, since you have more trade, the population are more, like, we have more, I would say, quality of life, I may say, because also it creates competition, and therefore there's more, like, productivity, and, like, people get better at what, like, they specialize at what they do.
what's the difference between a Ford car 1959 and a Ford car 213, other than this being a classic? Is it the same car? If I were to give you one of the two cars, which one do you prefer?
The old one.
The other one. Why?
Well, I like classics.
Yeah. In addition to that, what else?
I think it was built only in America.
Quality.
Once you start running your car, what will be the amount of gasoline you will have to consume compared to a 2013 Ford?
Yeah, a a lot more because there's like a,
Okay.
a bigger.
And then you're going to have a breakdown, and you need repairs. How much will the repair cost you? Okay, first you have to find the thing, but you find them, and therefore, because they are difficult to find, it's going to be very expensive. So if you really want the car to drive it, other than the feeling that I like all cars, but if you really like it for driving purposes, for the purpose that the car is supposed to be made, okay, which is to bring it to one place to another, the most reliable way and the least cost possible. Yeah? The fact that I have a 1959 and a 213 is the technology on the 213 makes it a completely different car from the one I have 1959. Yeah, I mean there is all this romantic view, but I like it. I used to have a Mustang 1965, and it was a beautiful car, and everything else until I had to sell it because. And so, what foreign direct investment brings to my country, in the sense of productivity that Yamel was talking about, is the fact that I have new technology. Yeah. So it will bring new technology to the country. It may not be the latest, probably. Normally they will bring the latest technology, which is the reason why they want to be sure that you're going to be respecting property rights. Because if I bring the new technology and you steal that from me, then I want to make sure that you don't do that. But I will bring you the new technology, but as I bring you the new technology, what am I going to do to your labor force?
Teach them.
Yeah, and therefore I'm going to be increasing the skills of your labor force.
And then the wages.
The wages, the number of people working, the skills of the population. Jamel was talking about productivity. This is how productivity starts happening in terms of changes in my economy. So foreign direct investment is good in many ways. It may also be bad. But the reason why I want foreign direct investment, and one of the benefits for Mexico, is the fact that we became a manufacturing export country. Okay? We went from primary goods to industrial goods as our manufacturing base. And so this is an economy which, when you look at it, it looks quite more modern than many economies in the world. And one of the results of NAFTA was that it made us, through foreign direct investment, new technology applications, labor that will go into better skills. It transformed us, modernized our economy. So there are many goods happening. And why is it good for companies wishing to do business in Mexico?
For the geographic location, the good, like labor force we have.
But we had before the labor, the geographical location. Why is
With
that?
NAFTA, the market is not only Mexico, it's the United States and Canada.
And what happens once I have NAFTA? What is the big key question that a company will be looking at?
You have more quality regulations in terms of medical products and
That's true. I have a larger market, but now what kind of market do I have? An open market or one where I have to pay tariffs? Okay. So if I'm a company and I'm looking to make investments in the world, all of a sudden I say, Mexico made an agreement with the United States. Because of that agreement, whoever sets shop in Mexico will be able to export into the United States. And therefore the market I'm looking at is not the Mexican market, it's the American market. But what I'm looking is two things. One, I can set up shop in Mexico at a reduced cost in terms of production costs, and I will be able to sell in the American market at a reduced cost because I will not be paying what? I will not be paying the tariffs, I will not be subject to quotas. And therefore it gives me a competitive edge over my rivals if I put my shop, my company, in Mexico. As long as I'm thinking, my market is either Mexico, Canada, or the United States. Okay? So for the companies, it's not as much doing business in Mexico, even though we have a large market. It is by putting my company in Mexico, my market has gone from Mexico to Canada to the United States. Altogether, over 450 million people, the richest market in the world. So of course I'm going to come. And that's the reason why we have foreign direct investment. What have the benefits been in the past 10 years?
Increased exports and investment flows.
So we have a lot of benefits coming from the production, from the flows, from the robustness of our balance of payments.
And,
That's what you will be saying next week. Yeah.
and also, I read that exports have been the lifeguard of Mexico because we have a lack of internal productivity.
And so the question is, then do we need in Mexico a policy that will protect what is called either nascent industries or infant industries, whatever you want? You know, this is a question that we have to discuss, because what happens is many people come and say, well, one of the problems is we are becoming just a colony for other companies. Our sovereignty is being attacked. Okay? These are the three questions that people pretty much ask all the time. And look, of course it works. It attracted foreign investment. Look at that. Okay? Look at the peaks. Even the valleys are nice. That means once we went into NAFTA, which was 1994, we began seeing an increase in foreign direct investment. And it not only came to manufacturing, it came to services, industry, and agriculture and fisheries. So it's a myth that only one sector has been benefited by that. People invested also in agriculture and fisheries. People also invested in services. People are investing all over the place. Okay? So, okay, it attracted foreign direct investment quite strongly. Recent examples. This is just, from a page that announced these investments last year. Ducommun will invest in Sonora. So this is a company that just came, a leading Carson, California-based provider manufacturer came to Sonora and made an investment of $6.6 million in machinery and equipment, blah, blah, blah. Lone Star will increase its presence in Mexico. And it came, okay? This is a company from Albuquerque, New Mexico, 65%. What is they investing there? Okay, mine. Pepsi-Cola and IDB partnered with Mexican farmers. And Fisher and Paykel Healthcare to expand in Mexico. Of course, you have no idea what companies are these, okay? In your lives, have you heard about it? But this is the point. The point is not only large companies come to Mexico, also smaller companies make investments in Mexico. Okay? So it's not a question of only a huge four-motor company, whatever. Also, there is a lot of foreign direct investment coming at different levels in different places of Mexico. Okay? They come in Sonora, they come in other places. Durango, Jalisco, many places of Mexico. And in addition, what is fantastic is how much money the Americans are giving us. The reason why we have a surplus of $163 million last year is basically because our increased exports to the United States were just one. And what you can see in 12,000, this was just to November, I didn't have the data, $57.4 billion surplus in trade with the United States. These are our exploiters, okay? The balance of payments between Mexico and the United States is positive in favor of Mexico. If anything, what the Americans have been doing is giving us money so we can buy things from other places. And basically, this is a transfer of money thanks to the balance of payment situation between Mexico and the United States. This was January, November, $57 billion. We probably have $62 billion surplus in our trade with the United States. So when people are making all these comments that, hey, they're exploiting us Americans, wait, look at this. I don't have the numbers anymore, but when I was in the Ministry of Economy, I used to go and make this speech that, come on guys, one of every two, betadels, are made in Mexico, the ones consumed in the United States. Broccoli, over 40% of the broccoli consumed in the United States is made in Mexico. There are lots and lots of data like that, which is amazing. Just tell you how much the Americans consume of Mexican agricultural products. And it's also true that corn we bring from the United States. Okay? This is the balance of payment, January, November. And of course, our companies have become competitive. And they have become so competitive that we see the jump. This is before GATT. Once we joined GATT, we began increasing. Once we joined NAFTA, we went like that. This is not a small economy, okay? Mexico exported over $300 billion last year. $300 billion. I dare you go and look, in terms of the geographical chart, the GDP of the 192 countries of the world. And take a look at how many of those have economies which are larger than $350 billion. You're going to find very few, which implies that Mexico, just in exports, is larger than many of those companies. Well, if we put trade together, we're going to have about $700 billion in trade. If we only have a surplus of 163 million, and we're exporting 350, that means we're importing about 350. Okay? Now, this is an economy which in dollar terms is going to be roughly about $1.1 trillion. One of the largest economies in the world. 60% of that economy is related to trade. We are a trade-oriented economy, whether we like it or not. Okay? This is the right, I don't know, say this in public, the right degree to be studying. Okay? Because this is really what's happening. We're moving into international trade at large volumes. Okay? Look at that. And of course, it makes us more competitive. None of these countries is as competitive as we are. They brag about it more than we do. But the fact that we have an open economy, more open than these economies, Brazil, China, and India, is making us more competitive. Okay? In per capita terms, these are the exports of Mexico compared to China. So yeah, sure, the Chinese export more. Yeah, sure, they are 1.3 billion, okay? We are only 112. Imagine a line of people. You count up to 112 million, and that's the last Mexican. Okay, we bring all the ones who are in the United States. 120. After that, you still have 1.18 Chinese. Okay? So, all of those guys need a job. All of those are willing to accept a lower salary than the latest Mexican. If we're in terms of salary competition, we're going to lose. So that should not be the competition. We're not competing in salary terms. We need to compete in productivity terms. We're very productive. And look at our non-oil exports. We're reaching large levels per month. And these are data which are given by companies, international companies. KPMG, one of the largest companies in accounting and makes all these studies, says Mexico is the most competitive country in manufacturing auto parts in the world. Of each 7 cars in the USA, 1 was produced in Mexico. The aerospace industry located in Mexico receives the most new investments in the world, Deloitte. Mexico is the largest producer of smartphones and the first of flat-screen TVs in the world. Mexico is the country with the lowest manufacturing cost relative to US costs in the world, AlixPartners. So these are companies which are making this analysis and are sending messages to the rest of the world, telling them, you want to go to a nice country? This is the country. Okay? But why is it the country? Because it opened its economy a long time ago. And by doing that, has become a very productive economy. These are not recommendations made by the Mexican government. These are recommendations made by international companies who advise people where to invest in the world. But it also has made us highly depend on international trade. And therefore, this is an economy which suffers a lot the impact of what's happening in the world, okay? So if we have an international recession, particularly in those countries to whom we are exporting, we are going to be affected by that. And that was the problem of the year 2008, 2009. Nothing to do with what we were doing inside the country, a lot to do with what happened in our international markets. Yes?
I was hearing a news about the route that the Republicans voted to not have it about debt, and they just postpone it until they realize what they can do about it. And I was hearing that there are two options. They either, have the roof, and then they can't spend more, and then they have a debt that they can't really pay, so then their country goes down, as Senator Flores will put the country down, or there's a chaos, and then they stop buying or importing, and then that affects Mexico. So
Absolutely. So one of the key things that we should be looking at is what's happening in the negotiations in the United States about the debt ceiling. If the debt ceiling is not increased, one of the problems they're going to be facing is they will be unable to pay a lot of things. That, as a chain reaction, will affect the consumer. As it affects the consumers, that will affect demand for products. And since 1 in every 7 cars sold in the United States is a Mexico-produced car, if we have a 20% reduction, okay, which will imply 3.5 whatever, we're going to be losing 1 or 2 cars that we will not be able to export, which implies a tremendous downfall for our Mexican exports of cars. In addition, because we have auto parts which are used by those cars as part of the production process, then you're going to have an impact in the final assembly and all the intermediate parts. Okay? Why Puebla will not suffer? Because we are Volkswagen. What's the difference between Volkswagen and the others? Volkswagen is not as dependent on the United States market as it is on that. But there is another reason why it won't happen. Because Volkswagen has a lot of cash in hand. And so one of the things that Volkswagen is doing, and the reason why it's penetrating markets in the United States and Europe, is the fact that because they have a very solid financial position, they can lend money to people at lower interest rates than other companies can. I am General Motors financial arm, and I am Volkswagen financial arm. Volkswagen financial arm can go to the Volkswagen markets, which are Germany. They can get loans at 1%. I go as GM, and because I don't have the financial situation of Volkswagen, I'm going to have to get loans at 2%, 3%. When I make that into financing the purchase of cars, Volkswagen is going to be stronger than GM. Everything counts in this business, okay? Yes, I am heavily dependent on the American market. So what happens in the American market, these negotiations of the debt ceiling, will affect me ultimately, and I have to be aware of that and be prepared for that. If I'm a company making business in Mexico, I have to look at that. Because what I can see is the proportion of GDP and the proportion of exports and how they grow. This increase in export has not transformed in the same level of increase in GDP. We only have 9.7, that's a lot, 9.7% increase, average annual increase in trade, in exports. Only 2.5 in growth. Something is wrong in the Mexican economy. Okay. Then of course, not only do we have the other problem, we have this other problem, which is, as we move into that, large companies are the ones who really are exporting. So when you look at how this is the distribution of exports and companies, you can see the following. The size of exporting companies in the year 2009 was such that large companies which had more than $100 million of exports represented 327, 1% of the total companies. But they represented 66% of total exports. So 1% of companies represented 66% of exports. Now this is very important, and we mentioned it before. We said one of the problems that we see is that the distribution of benefits of trade doesn't go the same way in an equal system. Here is one of the reasons. But in addition, politically speaking, these large companies, which are only 1% of the total companies in that market, represent 66% of the market. They must have a strong political power. They can skew decisions. This is everything that we said before, okay? As we were looking at the things in the course. This is going to happen. You're going to have a distribution of power which is not equal between participants in the market. Large companies, international companies are becoming more important in my political environment also. Then I have the medium companies, 7%, 28%. So when I put these two, I'm talking that 8% basically export 90%. Okay? This is the reality. High concentrated in a few companies. Small and medium, and these are the ones who are starting to export. What's the total number of firms that are in the foreign trade? 34,353 as of 2009. Okay. And of course, this is the big question. We don't grow. And here is the impact of international markets. Okay. Since my economy is so oriented to trade, when trade had a big hit in the year 2002, 2008, 2009, this is what happened to me. Okay. Then of course I'm recovering, but I'm not growing too fast. So this is the key question: why it hasn't brought growth to us? If everybody touts so much the benefits of trade, how come we have had this trade? Look at all the results and look at the meager growth of the economy. Didn't you tell me that trade was good? Is that what you're going to say to me next Friday? Yeah? And yet, who's taking my cheese? Okay? Someone is taking my cheese. Who's that? One of you is taking my cheese. Because I don't see my cheese. You tell me that there's a lot of cheese over there, but I don't see it here. Have you read that book? Who took my cheese? No? So, this is the question, okay? The question is why? Well, let me give you a very quick answer, and then we can go into more detail. The responsibility is not really NAFTA, okay? The responsibility is the structure of the Mexican economy. And this is one of the other things that we saw at the beginning of the class. Internal policy matters, and matters a lot. Because if you go into an open trade policy and you don't do the other things that you need to do, then you're going to have a problem. And one of the things that you don't do is you have not really opened many sectors in the Mexican economy. This comes from a study that was made on what is called the Herfindahl Index. Okay? And basically what they are doing, the index of Herfindahl. And what they did is they made this analysis in income. And what they found out is that there is a lot of protection in several sectors. Particularly we're talking petroleum, of course, oil, electricity, telecommunications, the newspapers, transportation, these are the companies that transport, airlines, construction, and the banking system. And as you can see, these are sectors which are very important for an economy to become efficient. These are the famous reforms that we need to do, okay? But the reforms are very clearly seen in terms of the concentration index in these economies. Concentration means non-competition. So if you open your economy and you go into a competition world of trade, you need to also free your economy inside so that it can compete efficiently.
Banks?
Oh yeah, banks, they say it's not as high as dollars, but there is a lot of concentration in banks.
Banks is not the best. Mexico is the best market for banks.
Yeah, and they're very concentrated in Mexico. 3 banks control over 70% of the market. It doesn't mean that they are not efficient, it means that they concentrate, and because of the concentration power, then they do things that they shouldn't. What do? They charge you for everything. Well, this is not good for you, yeah, because it has an increase in your costs. They can be inefficient and you have no way to solve that problem. Normally in the financial industry, you should have about 1% in terms of the return, and they charge you for everything, so they get a lot of money. When you look at the Santander results, BBW results, etc., and you look at the results, how much of that is money coming from Mexico as profits, you wonder what's happening.
Yeah, I heard that Vancouver has 70% of its market and money is coming from Mexico.
Okay? So there is a concentration there, and that allows the banks to be more inefficient than they should. They are very efficient if you compare them to Botswana. Yeah? But they are not as efficient as the ones that you have in the United States or Spain or England, even though there are banks who are established there. So concentration makes these banks to exercise powers and therefore inefficiencies that you should not see in other places. And those inefficiencies, you pay for them. And since you are a company and you are dealing with foreign trade, all those inefficiencies make you less competitive. Yes?
We can't open those markets like because of the political impact they have.
Oil, constitutional constraint. Electricity, constitutional constraint. Telecoms, dominant market. Who is the dominant in the telecoms in Mexico? Telmex, or Grupo Carso, whatever you want. Okay? In newspapers, they don't allow you to have TVs. You only have 2 national chains. Well, many of this is important for you, and therefore you have a concentration in that. Transport. A few families control the transportation by land of many of the things that you pass on. Airlines. There is no open sky policy in Mexico. Now, this is an exaggeration maybe for some, but it will make sense. Does it really matter whether you are flying United Continental or whether you are flying Aeromexico if United Continental gives you a ticket, round-trip ticket between Mexico and New York, $500, and Aeromexico charge you $500 between Mexico and Querétaro? It should be $20, yeah? I mean, proportion guarded. So because you have this restriction, so let people fly any place they want and see what happens with the market. That's terrible because not many people like it. Then you have, construction, you need money, and banks is the regulation that imposes. What is the cost of that? Oops. This is a study that was made by the World Bank, okay? And what they come to tell you is, look, when you look at the situation of the companies established in the 3 countries, which are NAFTA, and you use each one of them, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, what you see is that in terms of accountability, what's called governance of the enterprises, Mexico is the worst of the 3. And it's not only the worst, it's by a huge margin. Now, if you don't have the governance that you have in the United States and Canada, your company is going to be more inefficient. Because it will take decisions, just as we said for Pemex, the same can be translated into family-controlled companies. Who is going to be the chairman of the board of an industry such as Carso? Probably. Right now is the father. Yeah. So Mr. Slim will remain as chairman of the board. He happens to be a great person, fantastic, does great business. Yeah. Now let's look at the companies of Carso. Who are the general directors? Well, we'll leave it to you to find out. Okay. And then who are the? And as you look at that, and you look at the structure in Mexico, you will find out that many of the large companies are always in this family-oriented structure. Same situation happens in some companies in the United States, okay? Ford Motor Company is a company owned by the Ford family because they have a controlling interest. They don't have any more the shares, but they have a control share interest. As long as that implies that I have to put Bill Ford as the chairman and the director, I have a terrible company. When Bill Ford finally understood that he couldn't make it, he said, I have to look for someone. So they went out, they got a man who has transformed Ford Motor Company in the past 5 years from a bankrupt company to one of the biggest and strongest companies in the United States. Why? Because I went outside and I got the right person. If I don't have that, I will end up appointing people for reasons which are different from efficiency. Okay? It's because it's family, and I can only have family. I would recommend you to watch this horrible, it's not a movie, it's more like a series of 3 McCoys and Hatfields. Have you seen it? Okay, please go and see it. Because what you will see is the problem of family. Okay? This is a old feud in the United States in the 1800s after the Civil War. And this is 2 families in Kentucky and West Virginia. And they are the Hatfields and the McCoys. It's a great success right now in the United States because Kevin Costner, the actor, is the head of the family. And when you see this, that problem is family against family. And so you start killing people because they are not my family, they are your family. If you do that in governance, in companies, you're going to take the wrong decisions in appointing people to do the job. Okay? Political stability, well, we are getting better. Government effectiveness, regulatory quality, rule of law, okay? Control of corruption. We just saw examples in the past few days. Okay. I don't think there is a Mexican, well, maybe there are, who believes at this point the results that the IFE presented yesterday. Who's overspent and who didn't. Oh, give me a break. In my opinion, Josefina didn't, but the other 2 for sure they did. And the question is, give me a break. You're only accusing one, not the other one. So this is rule of law and corruption. Florence Cassés, okay, and many other things. It has a cost. It has a cost. Notice there is no security here. So if you had security there, you will find out also the cost of security for a company doing business in Mexico. As you have these things, and part of the problem of security is corruption and the fact that we don't have any rule of law, then the cost for a company of doing business in Mexico is too high. And that makes you to be less efficient than companies in the other countries. And that reflects in growth. Okay? So power, all these points, takes away from Mexico this amount. This is the impact of what I call, and these people call here, the institutional gap between Mexico and the United States. Okay? These are the problems. If you really want to look at the reports right there, okay, you will get this. And a question for you is, so it's not a question of trade. It's a question of, if I open my economy and I don't solve all the problems inside, then I'm going to have an inefficient opening, an inefficient trade result. I get everything else great. Loss of exports, more employment, foreign direct investment, all these things. But I don't get the benefits in growth that I could get if I had done the other reforms. So it's not NAFTA, it's our own internal policies in other areas which is affecting the results. And so, we're going to stop here. What really counts in public policy, I don't know, what time is this? Oh, guess what? My watch is stopped. So what time is it? No wonder I kept looking at this 10:30, 10:30. I said, my God. 11, 12, so we have 3 minutes. Okay. If you look at these things, you understand that what really counts in public policy, if you're going to go into a free trade area, is 3 key: capital, access to credit for the companies. They need access to credit. But access to credit doesn't mean, as people think, that I should give away money cheap. It means access to credit. And it implies that I need a good capital market and I need a good banking system. This implies, therefore, that I need to make sure that I can go and find sources of finance in the capital market, and I can put bonds and obligations as a company, or I can get people who will buy my stock, because that will give me the money. Okay? So I need a strong capital market, and I need rules and regulations for that capital market that will make it efficient in terms of companies going there to find finance. But the second thing is I need a serious banking system, okay? Because if I go to the banking system, and it's very solid, it's very strong, it has a lot of things, but when I go and I ask for something, they say, well, yeah, you know what, but I don't like your company because I'm not sure they will make profit, so I won't give you, or I will give you a loan, but it will be 20% interest rate. Takes you out of the market, okay? So I need to make sure that the banking system is efficient and is competitive, that there is competition in that system, so I can go and I can find sources of financing at cheap or lower interest rates. So this is a question which is important, money and credit, okay? Then the second one, we were saying here, if I bring new technology, I need better skills in my labor force. As the fact that I'm having more jobs in the economy linked to these companies creates a pulling up of wage salaries in the economy, then my labor force has to be more productive. Okay? Because it's becoming more expensive, so it has to be more productive. It's becoming expensive in terms of what I pay as a salary, what I will be asking as counterpart is more productive. So productivity counts. And productivity of the labor force in great measure depends on whether they are healthy and whether they are educated. Okay? So two big important policies in Mexico are health and education. If I don't have healthy people, they don't come to work. Or they work but they are weak, whatever. But in addition, I need them to be educated. I need them to understand when they look at a machine and they read the reading what it means. I need them to interpret rules. If you go to machine A, you have to do this and this. They have to know how to read. But it's not only how to read, it's also how to understand what they read. Process reading. Most of us read but don't process. Okay? I can put you to read something right now, and then I will ask you, what did you understand from that reading? So if you start answering back just what you read, then you didn't understand. The point of reading, aside from the pleasure, is, did you understand what you read? You have to process that. You need to be trained to do that. This skill, which is called, at least in this university, learn to learn, you have to teach people. So your educational system has to provide that kind of skills. Your health system has to provide healthy people. Okay. And then the third thing you need is, because productivity is so important, you need the innovation and you need therefore research and development. Okay? Many studies of what really gives the economy the possibility of growing is what is called the total factor productivity, which is the impact of innovation in many things, okay? Innovation in the way you do things, innovation in the machines that you use, innovation the way that you look at problems, show that 60% of the reasons why a country grows, in the 21st century in particular, come from research and innovation. So you need that. But in order to have that, you need competition. So when I saw you the other numbers before, just relate to this, okay? If you don't have a competitive environment, a competition in sectors, then you're not going to be innovative. You don't need to be innovative. There was a breakdown of Telcel system last week in Mexico City, okay? For about 6 hours, if I remember correctly, people who had Telcel as their network were unable to communicate with each other because the system broke down. At the end of those 6 hours, which by the way, happened because they needed to do some repairs, but they never warned anyone that they had to do those reforms, okay? Those repairs. So they knew that they had to do the repairs. Never warned anyone that they would be doing that. Started doing the repairs, the system breaks down, and for 6 hours, everybody who was connected to an Nextel phone couldn't make any kind of, I'm sorry, not Nextel, Telcel phone, could not make any kind of communication. I'm talking Telcel. Okay? 6 hours. At the end of that, did they apologize? No. What they did say, for those of you with prepaid, we're going to give you 20 pesos. I'm not going to give you 20 pesos, I'm going to give you the chance of use my system, 20 pesos. And to all of those who didn't, I'm going to give you extra minutes, I don't know, half an hour, whatever. Gee, great. This is the concept of a market where there is dominance. Because most of us didn't change from Telcel to other company because they don't have the kind of coverage that Telcel has. So the biggest problems that we're facing is, you treat me like dirt, but I have to accept it because I cannot move to another company. So give me another company, because then what I would have done is, thank you very much, keep your 30 minutes, I'm going to the next. Okay, you go to the United States, you have Verizon, you have this, you have that, and you can do that very quickly. Okay? But if I give you all these rules that in order for you to stay here, you have to pay 6 years, and then you do this and you do that, and if you really move out, I'm going to collect from you. Then, well, hey, wait. I only have iPhone 5 in this company. And I'm the only one who distributes iPhone 5 in Mexico. You want to have an iPhone 5? Guess what? You have to use my network. Why? Give me an iPhone. Give me whether it's 4 or 5 or whatever number. I'll buy that. And I'll decide which company I'm going to be connecting with. Now, because if you want an iPhone, you have to be with me. This is what's called dominance, okay? And you ask yourself, does it really have an impact? Yes. Because then I'm losing money, I'm losing connections. These 6 hours of not being able to connect had a cost to my business, to my life. And it's gone. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's not going to be 30 minutes that will bring it back. Whatever business I could not make during 30 minutes, 6 hours, whatever I didn't connect, has a cost. That's the real cost. So when you go back to those graphs and you look at them, remember, what they are showing there is the cost of not having a stronger and more competitive environment in Mexico. This is not criticism of Telcel. I'm using it because it's the dominant company in Mexico, okay? I will do the same from USACEL if I were the company, whatever. Yes?
Yeah, so like you are saying that innovation like requires competition, but like I think like this domination of power and corruption and everything is not new. Like it's been like ages. So how is this like gonna change? How can we then have competition if this hasn't changed like over years?
The first thing you have to do is, not because it's there, is right. Okay? But this is very important because what happens in Mexico, it was why it has been there for years. So, no. It's been there and it's wrong. What can I do to do it right? But is that just because I have this feeling of I'm going to be goody-goody? No. It's because it has a cost. It has a cost to me, to my company, and to my country in the end. Okay? So the reason is not only, if you wish, on moral grounds. You have to link that to the cost it has for each and every one of us. Because the one thing that makes people react very strongly is when you look at this and you understand that those 6 hours have a cost and that is not equivalent to 30 minutes of service free of charge. At that point, you go and say, wait. This cannot repeat itself so many times. So let me use a worse example in the sense of the impact. You have a company called Comisión Federal de Electricidad. If it's the only company that distributes and generates electricity, and they decide, because they didn't do the right investments, that your company, which is in the iron business, has to stop working at the peak hour of consumption in Mexico for 1 hour, what they are telling you is, every time that I'm saying that, your furnace has to stop working. In order for your furnace to go from 0 degrees to whatever degrees you need for the process, it takes 3 hours, 2 hours. So whenever I stop you, I'm not just saying, stop right now and I'll give you back to you in 15 minutes. It will create for you a cost of turning off and turning on those furnaces, which are very expensive in terms of moving, and that will increase the cost of production of iron and steel in Mexico. As you do that, the Mexican companies or the companies installed in Mexico will lose competitiveness vis-a-vis those companies in other countries which don't have that problem. But can they complain? Yes. Will it be important for the Comisión Federal? No, because they will say, tough luck. Who else is going to give you electricity if I don't give it to you? Okay? So you need to destroy that monopoly, because what it does, it creates this problem. Which is the same that many people in Mexico City, because they don't have water in their houses, and tough luck. Since I'm the only one who gives you water. You don't like it? Go and complain. Okay, who do you complain with? The same person who is giving you the service. So you walk to the person and he says, you know what? I'm very upset. Yes, I know. And I really say, yes, I know. And this and that, yes. Second, please, I need to do something. So stands up, leaves, and comes back with potato chips. Because she needed to eat some potato chips in that time. So she opens the potato chips, keep complaining. And you feel better because you yell. But the result is the same. The result is you don't have the water in the house. You don't have the electricity in your company. And that, in part, is because of the fact that we have concentration on the market, and that is bad for the country. As I let you know the cost, as I put you into this, you start organizing yourself, and you start saying, this cannot be tolerated in this country. Okay? Because it makes me less competitive, and I cannot compete. And so please give me these things. As you become a better citizen, and you understand how much it costs you in your pocket, you start yelling back. You start acting back. So that's going to happen in Mexico slowly in your lifetimes, which is nice because you still have about 65 years to live, and that gives you a lot of chances to do these things. But I'm serious about this. You have to do it during your lifetime. Because otherwise what you know now is the cost to your lives. So you cannot just sit and relax and say, well, I cannot complain. Yes, you can complain, but in addition you can act. And in addition you can act in politics, and you can tell the politicians, sorry man, I need you to vote this way. And I will not tolerate someone who is appointed by the 3 large companies in telecommunications as senator or representative of the Mexican population. That's not right. So I will not let that pass. That means you have to participate in politics. Okay? Not only in business. It is important for you. Okay, we're going to come back to these questions, okay? After the debate that we'll have. Ready? Be prepared. 5 minutes each group. And this we are going to start doing every week. Second and final announcement. It's time for you to decide whom you are going to be having as your partner for the paper. So 2 things that has to happen next week. You have to decide the group, 3 people per group, okay? 5 groups, and decide the topic of your paper. Remember, the paper is the final exam. Okay?